The budget backlash. Will the Chancellor's plans really get more people back to work? The independent IFS says that is uncertain, but what is clear is that households still face economic challenges and will feel continuing pain for the next year. Jeremy Hunt says his plans are vital. Also, this lunchtime, Strike UK. Could the NHS ones be off? We'll have the latest, but any deal doesn't include doctors.
Here's how to fold a fitted sheet.
Period. TikTok to be banned on government phones. Why this? Why now? And what does it mean for you? Twice the width of the United States, the mass of seaweed caused by climate change that's killing fish in the Atlantic. And Eurovision countdown, May Muller on her relief that people seem to like her entry.
I'm very happy with how it's gone, and people seem to be enjoying the song, which was like the most important thing. So, whew. Yeah, that's good.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. The Chancellor's back-to-work budget is being questioned and criticised by Labour and the IFS. Jeremy Hunt announced big changes to pensions and childcare yesterday. The Independent Institute for Fiscal Studies said today it is highly uncertain what impact the extension of free childcare will have on the labour market. Its verdict overall was that households across the country will feel continuing economic pain over the next year, despite the UK not being expected to now enter a recession. On the pensions changes, Labour said it would reverse them, while Mr Hunt defended the move, saying the NHS spends £3 billion a year paying for freelance doctors and nurses, and the tax changes would stop thousands of consultants from retiring early. With the latest reaction, here's our political reporter, Amy Lewis.
The message from the Chancellor was clear. The government has a grip on the economy and is focused on growth. But the UK's leading independent economic research institute is less optimistic.
What households are going to feel over the next year will be continuing pain. Inflation may be coming down, but prices remain much higher than 2 years ago. Earnings haven't caught up. The freezing of income tax and NIC's personal allowances and thresholds will cost most basic rate taxpayers about £500 next year.
I report today on a British economy which is proving the doubters wrong.
The positive news is that the UK is no longer expected to enter a recession this year, but there are still challenges ahead: high tax, falling living standards and high inflation. The Chancellor has been touring TV studios selling his plan to support those who are struggling.
Let me tell you what we're doing for people at the other end of the spectrum. Over £3,000 of help on average per household this year and last, with energy bills and other cost of living measures. So we absolutely want to be a government that helps people who need it.
Do you guys know how to do high fives?
There were a few giveaways in yesterday's budget, like more support with childcare that's been largely welcomed. But the Chancellor has been criticised for scrapping the lifetime pensions allowance. He says it will encourage medical consultants to carry on working, but critics say it is a tax break for the richest. The £1 million pension pot limit has been scrapped. There'll now be no penalty taxes over that amount. This will cost taxpayers more than £1 billion, but only the top 15,000 earners are expected to benefit.
We'll be forcing a vote in the House of Commons next Tuesday, where we urge Conservative MPs to vote with us and vote for their constituents' priorities rather than a tax cut for the 1%. And if Labour forms the next government, we will reintroduce a cap on how much you can save in your pension with a taxpayer subsidy.
MPs have a chance to debate the budget this afternoon and unpick what it means for voters who need help the most. Amy Lewis, ITV News.
Our economics editor, Joel Hills, was at the IFS briefing this morning. He joins me now. Joel, the Institute's saying today households will endure further pain when it comes to their own budgets.
Yeah, definitely, Nina. Look, we should say that there was praise for some of the announcements that the Chancellor made. His plan, his strategy to revive growth, broadly the IFS thought was actually perfectly sensible. There were a lot of caveats, though, on the extension of free childcare. The IFS thinks that it will likely only have a modest success in getting people into work. On that controversial pensions reform, the changes may not persuade anyone back into the workforce, says the IFS, but will be a hugely generous tax break for the better off. On the incentives for businesses, really important issues here. They were welcomed, but the IFS should have been announced 2 years ago, along with the corporation tax changes. Making them temporary also creates what it called an absurd uncertainty for companies. The economic outlook more broadly, of course, does look a little improved. The OBR thinks we will avoid a technical recession, but as you're pointing out, Nina, households are likely to feel poorer for some time to come. Disposable incomes in 4 years' time, according to the IFS, will be no higher than they were before the pandemic began. The IFS says we face a decade of lost living standards. Some of the squeeze is down to public policy, government policy, of course. We're just 1 year into the freeze on income tax and national insurance thresholds. Next year, the IFS says 1.7 million extra people will suddenly find themselves paying income tax. Critical too of the lack of announcement on a lack of announcement on public sector pay. You can't keep cutting the pay of teachers and nurses. Money will have to be found from somewhere at some point. Yesterday, the IFS thinks was the time to do that.
Joel Hills, thank you. Could there finally be a settlement in the long-running NHS dispute across England? It is expected the government will put forward a formal offer to ambulance and nursing unions later today, but that doesn't include junior doctors. Our political correspondent Libby Vina joins me from Westminster. The signs are optimistic this lunchtime, but union members, they will get a final say on any deal, won't they?
Yes, they will. But I think this is a substantial offer, and I think the unions will be minded to accept it. As Joel was saying, we didn't hear anything in the budget about more money for NHS staff. But I understand that what is on the table now is a one-off non-consolidated payment for this year and an increase for staff for next year of something in the region of 5%. Well, for next year, that would mean an above inflation pay rise, which is what the unions have said they wanted all along. Earlier today, the Chancellor was sounding optimistic that a deal is in sight.
The only thing we've said is we don't want to do an offer that means inflation gets entrenched and we're having the same argument next year. We have to bring down inflation. That's one of the Prime Minister's key priorities. But I think the discussions have been encouraging. So let's see what happens. But if you're saying, as Chancellor, am I prepared to be flexible to try and bring these disputes to the end? Yes, I am.
I think the obvious question that many people will be asking this lunchtime is why it has taken so long for the government to come to the table and actually offer more money. I spoke to the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, just now, and he said something like 140,000 appointments had been cancelled as a result of the disruption in the NHS. And that is real disruption for people who are waiting for medical treatment. The question is why could the government have not come forward with some kind of offer like this earlier? Nevertheless, I think for the staff themselves, they will be hugely relieved. I think the chances are that this is an offer that will be accepted.
Libby Vina, thank you. The American military has released dramatic footage of the moment a Russian fighter jet collided with a US surveillance drone over the Black Sea over waters near Crimea, which Russia has annexed from Ukraine. The video was taken from a camera on the MQ-9 Reaper drone and shows two different passes taken by the Russian jets to spray it with jet fuel over international waters. The US has called Tuesday's incident a brazen violation of international law. It is the first time Russian and US military aircraft have come into direct contact since Russia invaded Ukraine just over a year ago. In the last few minutes, it's been announced TikTok is going to be banned from government phones after security concerns were raised about the Chinese-owned app. There are 1 billion TikTok users around the world, with 23 million of them in the UK. The EU Commission and more than half of US states and Congress have already introduced a ban. I'm joined now by our correspondent Neil Connery, and in the last few minutes the UK government has announced it's following suit.
Absolutely. As we speak, the Cabinet Office Minister Oliver Dowden up on his feet in the Commons. The National Cybersecurity Centre have carried out this review into this. A number of government departments, as we know, have TikTok accounts, actually including the Ministry of Defence, and a number of well-known politicians have had TikTok accounts or still do. So this is clearly a matter of concern. The US banned TikTok from official devices back in December. The European Commission followed suit last month. Canada and Belgium have also taken similar action. Now, TikTok has strongly denied allegations that it hands users' data to the Chinese government. It says that's based on misplaced fears and seemingly driven by wider geopolitics. But as we know, Chinese intelligence laws require firms to help the Communist Party if they're requested to do so. But this ban will also likely anger Beijing, which has already accused the US of spreading disinformation over TikTok.
And what should we do when governments are banning it? What does that mean for anyone who's got TikTok on their phone?
Well, clearly a lot of concern. Let's see exactly what is being said in the Commons in the next few minutes. Will this ban just be for ministers and officials? That seems to be the case, and that's understandable given the sensitive information they carry on their devices. But as we know, this is hugely popular with young people, their parents, they watching, wondering what does it mean for them if the British government is saying TikTok isn't safe to use. Well, what does it mean for the rest of us? Interestingly, yesterday, the Science and Technology Secretary, Michelle Donnellan, told MPs that the public could go on using the app. She said, because we have the strongest data protection laws in the world, we are confident that the public can continue to use it. But now that the UK government has come out in the last few minutes and announced this ban on ministers, officials, civil servants using TikTok on their devices, clearly the rest of us are going to have to wait and see what it means for us.
There we are. Neil Connery, thank you very much. Thank you. A 400-year-old hotel thought to be housing Ukrainian refugees has been destroyed in a fire in Midhurst in West Sussex. It broke out shortly before 1 o'clock this morning in a building next door before spreading to the Angel Inn. 4 people were treated at the scene, but no one was taken to hospital. A giant mass of seaweed so big it can be seen from space is heading for America's east coast. Scientists believe at 5,000 miles wide, it's the largest ever seen. Moving along the Atlantic Ocean, it's caused by climate change and pollution, and can also cause pollution and kill fish. Charlotte Cross on the impact of what some experts are calling the blob.
It's big, it's ugly, and it's heading for America. A giant mass of seaweed has grown to 5,000 miles wide. That's almost twice the width of the United States.
This is a totally new oceanographic phenomenon. It wasn't until 2011 that we began to see this unusual bloom develop in the central tropical Atlantic Ocean.
It's called sargassum and is a kind of algae which is buoyed by oxygen bubbles, meaning it never hits the ocean floor. It does provide valuable habitats for species like shrimpfish and turtles, but as it reaches shore, it can block light from getting to coral. It also damages air and water quality as it decomposes, giving off a smell akin to rotting eggs, as well as killing fish. Experts are now looking for solutions to the problem, which is caused by climate change and pollution, such as fertiliser runoff, among others.
Saharan dust, biomass burning in Africa, and natural sources like upwelling. We can figure out what the drivers are of this big blob, then maybe we can take some action to mitigate it.
Meanwhile, the cleanup continues. Huge amounts of the weed have already started washing up on beaches in Florida and the Caribbean, along with the ocean life already suffering the consequences. Charlotte Cross, ITV News.
A young Everton fan who had to face cancer treatment and the death of his dad during the pandemic was left speechless when one of his football heroes paid him a surprise visit.
Hello. Hi, mate. How are ya? You okay? Nice to meet you. I'm Jordan.
The look on Harry Garside's face said it all when he met his hero. Everton and England goalkeeper Jordan Pickford. The 8-year-old was diagnosed with pneumonia and sepsis before doctors discovered a brain tumour, most of which was removed. But 9 months later, the part that remained became active and Harry had a month of radiotherapy. Whilst he was having treatment, Harry's dad died suddenly at the age of 40. Pickford said he was inspired by Harry's story and invited him for a kick around with some of his teammates.
Yeah, we're going in that one.
Finally, Few, Mae Muller's reaction to people enjoying the songs she's written to represent the UK at the Eurovision Song Contest. She says she's looking forward to honouring Ukraine at this year's special show and to stepping into Sam Ryder's big shoes. Here's Faye Barker.
Instead I wrote a song about how you did me wrong.
Mae Muller co-wrote a song, and it's the song that'll be the UK's entry at this year's Eurovision. And the 25-year-old's excitement is growing as the competition in Liverpool in May draws closer.
I feel very lucky to be able to represent the UK with a song that, is really kind of personal and close to me. And people seem to be enjoying the song, which was the most important thing. So, whew.
She's no stranger to pop, with several hits already under her belt.
I want to talk to you.
And at the age of 9, she appeared in Mika's video for his #1 single, Grace Kelly. That connection continues. He hosted Eurovision in Italy last year. And it was then that Sam Ryder's Spaceman rocketed the UK back into the game, coming second to Ukraine and taking on hosting duties this year because of the ongoing conflict. So can Mae keep up the momentum?
It adds a little bit of pressure, but I think it's good pressure because, Sam added so much more positivity to how the UK was seen. Personally, he's done me a huge favour because everyone's kind of looking at it with a bit more hope.
And that hope gives Mae every point to play for.
Instead I wrote a song.
Faye Barker, ITV News.
She did indeed. That's all from me. Bye-bye.